One of the biggest challenges that we see with business owners is that they're looking for a finish line. They're looking for something that's essentially not there. And we believe that that really can lead us to burnout. It's about pushing ourselves to achieve a goal, and then we arrive at that goal, but for some reason we're left feeling really empty. And I think that this is such a challenge because it limits us in what we can achieve in our business, but it also provides the opportunity for us to do a lot of self-doubt, a lot of beating ourselves up, and a lot of thinking that perhaps we're not good enough. So as a starting point, Em, I'd love for you to share some thoughts on what you think about this.
I think whenever we're looking at goals, we also have to look at fulfillment. And I think sometimes those two things get separated, which is why we can arrive at a goal and not feel good about it. Obviously, in business, we set goals and KPIs around numbers and clients, and these are very binary codes that are quite easy and imperative, right, for business growth. And there is sometimes, I think, a lack in conversation around, well, what's that actually going to feel like? And what are the other metrics that might be sort of softer metrics that go along with that? And they also might be metrics that are outside of the workplace, right? So these metrics might include, how many times did I get to pick my kids up from school this week? Or how many holidays did I get to go on with my family or my friends? Or, you know, these other things inside of our existence that create more of a whole experience. In my observation and experience, a lot of burnout comes when people are singularly focused towards one thing at the detriment to other areas of their life. And I think, yeah, goal setting is so imperative, of course. But if you're going to arrive at that goal and you're not going to feel fulfilled, then where's the point in having the goal?
Absolutely. Have you experienced anything like that, Nick?
Yeah, and what comes to mind is that the goal setting is very masculine. So if we look at the flow and the beautiful synergy between feminine and masculine, and we're taught hustle, we're taught masculine ways of doing business and goal setting. And of course, as Em said, that's super important, but we need to bring the element of flow. We need to bring the feminine energy to that as well. So there has to be agility, there has to be flexibility. And also what comes to mind is that's why we talk about prioritize life. So it's, yes, you've got to have business goals and life goals, but, you know, include prioritize life goals in there as well. I remember years ago, early days of my first business, having a chat with a client and saying, okay, let's set you some KPIs, KPIs around how many date nights you're going to have and how many hours of me time you're going to schedule each week. And it was this concept of, well, yes, that's a masculine approach to prioritize life and bringing some flow, but we've got to have the structure and then the flexibility within that. That's what comes up for me around this.
Absolutely. I remember when I started my first business and I was working towards getting this huge contract with a client. It was, you know, worth 100K, and it was really sweaty armpit moments and lots of conversations with my coach at the time. And I got to the like the final meeting and sort of like was as nervous as anything, but really stood my ground and sold this contract. And so I was so excited, and I got out to the car and I rang my business coach, and he was like, yes. And that was really, really cool. And then I drove home, and at the time I was sharing care of my kids, so they weren't in my house. And I got home and I'm like, I'm going to have some champagne. And I kind of looked around and there was the cat. And I'm like, don't think you're going to drink champagne with me. And I was left feeling so like I reached out to my mum and my sister, and I told them, and mum was like, oh, that's nice, dear. And I'm like, you don't understand how much went into this. And then I think after that, there was something that came. I expected a different feeling or a different experience than what I was, because I felt really deflated after that. It was like, oh, I really expected this moment to mean more. And then it was just this realization that it wasn't fulfilling in every way, but it was very much about, you know, this is the marker. I guess I had associated it with the marker of success. I'm successful if I can get this. If I don't get this, what would that say about me? I don't know. So what are your thoughts in relation, because I know, Em, you work with many, many different people, not just business people, but, you know, career people and all of those kind of things. Where have you seen this, and where can this sort of really hold people back, this thinking of arriving somewhere and then getting there and it's all not what they thought it would be?
Yeah, it's a real identity piece, isn't it? Because, and this sounds so trite to say, but it's so true. If you don't see yourself as successful before the contract, the likelihood is you're not necessarily going to see yourself as successful after the contract, because the contract can't really be the thing. You know, it's like losing the weight can't make you love yourself, or, you know, having the business class flight can't, it makes you a bit more comfortable, but it doesn't really say anything about who you are. Yeah. And so I think there's definitely an identity piece here that we need to work with. And it is a self-worth piece. It is, again, it's looking for different types of metrics. And of course, we really desire things. And of course, we desire a certain income. And of course, we would like to feel like our hard work has paid off and it's been recognized. Of course, those are all perfectly human experiences. And it would be weird if we denied that that was what was going on. But can you see your worth despite the contract? Can you be worthy in an economy seat as well as in a first class seat? And can you see that your worth doesn't change in either of those two spaces? And that's the spiritual aspect, I think, of being in business. And this is why business is such a personal development trip. You know, you really do learn so much about yourself. And I think we enter a real danger zone. And this is where we do see things like burnout, because burnout isn't just physical exhaustion. Sometimes it's spiritual exhaustion, right? It's this internal tiredness that no amount of sleep is going to cure for you, is where we begin to create this cognitive dissonance almost between like, I will be okay with who I am when, as opposed to like, I need to be okay with who I am now. And in a very weird, paradoxical, isn't the universe funny kind of way, the moment that we release the resistance to I will be okay when, and we begin to say, actually, you know what? I'm successful now. I am worthy now. I am lovable now. Funnily enough, the contract suddenly becomes a bit easier to work towards, and sometimes weirdly, magically, it seems, comes to you a bit easier.
That's such a good insight. And I think too, within, maybe it's through that journey of not feeling quite worthy, we start to question, well, there must be something wrong with my mindset. There must be something wrong with the way I'm thinking about this. Maybe I've got a limiting belief. Maybe I need to go and spend the next 10 hours, you know, really journaling what this problem is so that I can overcome the problem within me in order to get the thing externally. And I think we can get really sucked into that vortex. I know I have in the past, especially as a coach. Hello.
Absolutely. And isn't it easier sometimes to sit and navel gaze than actually rock out and do the work? I have absolutely had to call myself out many times where I've just been like, I'm just going to potter off over here and ignore the big scary thing that I have to do for my business over here, because I need to work out why I'm not doing it. But then in the process of trying to work out why you're not doing it, what are you doing? You're not doing it. So at some point, I think, you know, we talk a lot in the mindset world around uncovering all these limiting beliefs and sorting through our stories. And that's all really awesome stuff. And I teach it and I live by it. And it's the foundation of my business. And sometimes you are just going to have to decide to take the action and then wait for your identity to catch up with you. And I think sometimes we tread into murky water in the personal development space or in the coaching space, where we spend a lot of time navel gazing, a lot of time thinking about who we need to be or why we're not being this particular way. And, you know, like a lot of things, I remember someone said this about forgiveness to me once, and it made such sense. It's like, just forgiveness is just a choice. You just have to make the choice to do it. Sometimes you just have to make the choice to show up in your business and be somebody that you don't know if you are yet. And that might be having a really hard conversation with a team member. It might be pitching for a sale, even though you don't feel confident. It might be picking up the phone and making a cold sales call, which nobody ever in the real world, nobody ever wants to do that. Let's be honest. But sometimes there are things that are necessary for business growth we need to lead with the action, and then we kind of catch ourselves up in terms of our identity. And I think when we look at behavioral modification, which is ultimately the whole point of mindset, right, is that we are looking for behavior change so that we can create external change. And that's kind of the way that we've traditionally always taught it. Start with a mindset, because then your behavior will change and then your external results will change. Sometimes I think we just have to turn around and say, I'm just going to have to make this behavior happen in me today. I'm going to have to show up as this person today, even if I don't feel like it, even if I don't know if I've got a solid belief system to back it up. And sometimes the mindset is the thing that catches up. And I don't think we talk about that enough when it comes to the coaching world, that sometimes we just have to put ourselves forward. And then of course we can talk forever about imposter syndrome, right? Yeah, but I feel like an imposter. Of course you feel like an imposter. You're just rocking up as someone you've never been before. You're not meant to feel normal and safe and, you know, oh yeah, no, I do this all the time. No, you're doing something you've never done before. You know, you're pitching to someone that you've never pitched to before. You're pitching for an amount of money that you've never pitched for before. You're having an awkward conversation that you've never had before with someone you've never spoken to in this way before. That is going to feel weird. And there is going to be a massive dissonance between who you were before that conversation and who you are now after that conversation. And that dissonance is uncomfortable. But we all know, right, of course, that the change is what happens in the uncomfortable space.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said around take action and let your identity catch up with you, which is almost like a definition of imposter syndrome, because you are literally feeling like somebody who you're not yet, but taking action and behavior and doing behaviors as though you are that person. Well, that was a really uneloquent way of saying what you said, Em, which really landed and resonated with me a lot, especially because there is this kind of expectation, I think, and this is what we opened the conversation with around, oh, I'm going to, you know I need to be XYZ to achieve this goal that's in front of me. But then we need to continually evolve and change, because that's like what Ness was saying around, then the goal feels empty. The fulfillment isn't there. You know, you talked, Em, about the meaning. And so is it almost like, do you think that we need to continue to evolve and change who our identity is, and that needs to continue to grow, otherwise we can get really stuck? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very dangerous place to feel like, oh, I'm done. I remember when I was a kid, I just assumed that when I grew up I would have all of the information that I ever needed. And it took me a really long time to grow up, I'll be really honest. I was probably 35 before I began to assert any type of responsibility for how my life was turning out. I remember it was like a moment, which was also flooded simultaneously with tears, when I realized that I was waiting tables at the age of 34 for $20 an hour. I was like, I had no control over where life was taking me. I was just along for the ride. And the moment that it was pointed out rather lovingly and harshly at the same time to me that you are completely responsible for the results that you have in your life, which was a revelation. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. And that was a real turning point for me in my journey of just like, oh, I've got to be in this space of evolution. Just because I've been on the planet for 35 years, it doesn't mean anything in terms of wisdom. It doesn't mean anything in terms of learning. Like, it doesn't stop when you turn 18. Like, there's this whole other explorative journey that I honestly have to go on. It's not, for me, it wasn't even a choice. It was like, I cannot stay here. I cannot fetch another beer for table 23 with a smile on my face while I am slowly but surely dying on the inside. And so the pain of staying where I was became far greater than the fear of finding out who I could be. And so then I started on this journey, right? So here I am, and I'm doing all this coaching stuff, and I'm learning all this stuff about personal development, and I pluck up the courage. And believe me, there was no confidence here. It was pure courage of just like doing my first Facebook Live, and absolutely no one watched it or liked it, and then doing it again and growing this business. And as I have done that, I think I look back now and I think, oh, do you remember when I thought, once I grow my business, then I'll be done. Once I have enough money to no longer wait tables, then I'll be satisfied with who I am and where I'm at. And then of course that happened. And then you're like, well, if I can do this, I can do this. And all of a sudden I was like, and again, this is a very spiritual experience, is to recognize that you are a constant, emergent, evolutionary part of nature. And nature doesn't get to just be like, oh, tide came in, we don't need to do that again, you know, or the apple fell from the tree, so now there's no more apples. That's not the way it works. It's like a constant regeneration of self. And we see this in the business world. You know, businesses that sit on their laurels will be taken over by other businesses who choose to evolve. And to think that we as human beings, as the people who create these businesses, are not also part of that evolutionary process is a very dangerous thing. So you should be uncomfortable with feeling comfortable. Like, if you are comfortable for too long, there should be a little warning bell that goes off and says, oh, I need to start pushing myself. I need to start doing something different. I need to start thinking innovatively. I need to check in with my team and see where are areas of growth that we haven't thought of before. And that's not in a capitalist, you should go and, you know, dominate the market and have all the money, because honestly, I'm a socialist at heart. It's coming from a place of like, am I growing? Am I expanding? Am I asking more of myself on a daily basis? And I think if we are in that motion, then we will always feel alive, right? And again, this doesn't just apply to our business. This is, you know, in all of the facets of our life. You don't get to go to the gym once and be like, I'm fit now. That's not the way it works.
I wish.
And we, right. I've done my physical exercise for this lifetime.
All my life.
And we've all seen it in relationships, either relationships we've been in or relationships that we've seen friends experience, where you're like, oh God, what happened? You're splitting up. What happened? And they're like, well, we just stopped investing in each other. And so the relationship dies because it needs life, and it needs energy, and it needs creation, and it needs constant breathing into, as do we. And I'm always checking in with myself, like, where can I breathe bigger in my life?
Love that.
Where can I breathe bigger? That really resonates with me. I think there's a lot of possibility in what you just said. So, you know, for me, I quit my long-term government job at, you know, in my early 40s and started a business because I was uncomfortable being comfortable. And what I love about this is that it's saying we can reinvent ourselves, we can lean into change. It doesn't matter how old we are. We can learn how to do things differently. And when I see women particularly stuck in that phase of business that's exhausting, where they're trying to reach a goal, they've now got other people that they're responsible for their mortgages and all of those kinds of things, and they are so far in the rut that they don't realize that there is a way out of that. And so that discomfort, sometimes it's about the discomfort of, I can't keep going like this. I don't know what to do, but perhaps I need some help. Perhaps I need to take responsibility for how I got here and look at how I can shift that so that I don't actually end up running myself into the ground. And I really, truly believe that we know when we're on that path. And sometimes we just bury our head. We know when a relationship is going bad and we bury our head and we just go, oh, it'll get better and work will get better and things will get better, but they don't unless you take action.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, Ness, it's actually really sad because so many women especially leave it longer than necessary for you know, all the different reasons, but it's natural. This is natural. Seasons and cycles that you're talking about, that we're talking about, just take a look outside. We live in a cyclical, seasonal world. We are a part of nature. Don't know if I'm going to woo-woo here, but this is the reality. So why do we, but again, we've been taught to have different expectations on ourselves. So we put these, expectations. If the relationship breaks down, something's wrong. Well, maybe it's just a season and a cycle that's come to end. And perhaps that's something to celebrate. Similar with businesses. And let me just say, celebrate, honor, doesn't have to be, there still can be sadness in that. It's not this hyped up fake positivity of world that we sometimes also have expectations to live by. If we can embrace the cycles and seasons in our life, in our business, in all areas. I really loved the point that you made, Em, around spiritual burnout. There's physical burnout, there's emotional burnout, there's just so many different facets, and we've got to stop being so lineal in just throwing ourselves into one area of life and only focusing on, say, feminine and masculine energy and balance and flow and whatever we wanted to call it in one area, but actually look at it, take a step back and look at it more holistically. We know, and this is a bit of a coaching cliche, but it's worth throwing out, courage does not show up until you've taken the first step. So we're waiting for courage. If you're listening, you might be waiting for the courage to show up. If, then I will. Well, no, take the first step and then the courage will show up.
Yeah, I think it's there's such power in knowing what season that you are currently in. We've been talking about this quite a lot in my membership group really recently. I had a phenomenal woman. She's just become pregnant with her second child. She has side hustle. She's also teaching to be a Pilates instructor, and she works part-time, and she's got one under 2 and another one on the way. And she came with a question about procrastination and motivation. She was like, I just, she's like, I'm not getting everything done, and I've got this thing going on over here, I've got this thing going on over here, I've got this thing going on over here, and I just feel like I'm failing at all of it. And I was like, what season are you currently in your life? Like, what is going on for you right now? And you're knowing that all seasons end. What's happening right now in your life that's the most important thing to you right here, right now? And of course, her answer was motherhood. And I was like, so you're asking yourself to be a mother full-time, a Pilates instructor and a student full-time, a side hustler. And we all know that side hustlers, you may as well just get rid of the word side, because it's hustle. It's hard hustle to have a side hustle. And you're also working part-time, and you've got a husband, and you have friends, and you're trying to, hold on to some kind of your own sense of identity, because I'm not a mother myself, but I do hear that there's an identity shift that happens when you become a mother and you lose yourself a little bit in that. I was like, what can you put down? What can you pick back up in the next season of your life? And I think there is a lot of power in knowing what you can let go. And we can translate this into a business owner who has a team. What are you trying to hold on to that might even be better done by somebody else, or might be a project that needs to take place in a year that maybe doesn't have the right infrastructure around it right now for you? What can be outsourced? And in all areas of life, but like the understanding how to let something go and to manage the stories around that, of course, because there'll be all sorts of stories like you're a failure and you're not doing enough, and that woman over there on Instagram is doing it, and Bet Judd is doing it, and Zoe Foster Blake is doing it, and you're like, well, Zoe Foster Blake has got millions and millions of dollars in the bank account, so of course she's doing it. And I'm sure she's also having her own form of existential crisis, because everybody is. And so again, being really aware of that comparison narrative that I think with women especially is really prominent. And just to get on my little feminist soapbox here for just a second, we have entered a huge collective paradigm shift, especially as women, and we are redefining what gender is. We are redefining what a female's relationship is with the world and with the workforce, and we're fighting battles for equality and equity in the workplace. And we have been told that we can have it all, and we are trying to have it all at the same time. And the system is not around right now to support that for us. And so having a conversation firstly with yourself around what season of my life am I in, what things hold the biggest value to me right now, and how can I let go of some of the stuff that might not be for this season right now. I don't think we afford ourselves that grace enough.
Especially when it comes to linking that to our goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, again, because if you've got a goal that your business is going to generate $500,000 by the end of the year, everything else seems to just immediately fade into the background. Why do you want that $500,000? What do you think that's actually going to do? How is that realistically going to improve your life? And are you really willing to take the action and become the person that you are going to need to be in order to create that.
I love that. We touched on that in a separate conversation around, like, own it, actually look at what's not just the work that needs to be done, but I love the distinction there, Em, around who I need to be to achieve that. And also, again, I remember I used to really separate business from my life. And I'm not like that anymore because it's an ecosystem. Nikki is an ecosystem. So are you, Em. So are you, Ness. So is everybody listening. And we've got to look at how that ecosystem fits together, and then the seasons and the cycles. And I adore how you've just explained that. I had a similar conversation with a client just yesterday, who is a mom of 2 young kids, full-time employment, just crazy. I'm like, but hold up, is your life the same now as it was even 3 months ago? Even 2 months ago? No. Okay, then why do you have the same expectations today on what you can achieve in a way where you can still breathe, let alone breathe bigger? But we just go through life not even thinking about it often. And I agree, stop, pause, and ask those wonderful questions. I'm definitely going to be listening to this episode again. Thank you so much, Em. This has been amazing. I feel like we could talk for hours on this. We like to wrap up with one final question. And honestly, you've shared so many different avenues and points. I'm going to really open it up because, as you know, we're all about ourselves and our clients and helping our community break the cycles that hold us back in business and in life. What do you think is an actionable that people can walk away now, today, and go, right, what's one action I can take to break a cycle? And I'm keeping it really open because there's quite a few cycles we've talked about that could be broken. So I'm curious to see what comes up for you.
So let me just double check I've got the question right. So what is the one action step that can be taken today that will put into motion this breaking of the cycle?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if this is necessarily an action. Oh yeah, I can make it an action. I would write down on a piece of paper, I would go and find a really quiet spot in the office, in the corner of the house, in your car, if you need to. And I would sit down and I would close my eyes and I would put my hands on my heart and I would take 3 very deep inhales through the nose and exhales through the mouth. And I would ask myself this question: what part of my life is not working for my soul right now? And I would write down the very first answer that came to me, not the second answer, not the 1.5 answer, not the yeah, but answer, not the, oh God, I don't want it to be that answer. I would be really honest about the area of life. It might be being a mum isn't working for you right now, and you might need to go and outsource some of that and get a nanny or ask your mum for some more help or whatever it might be. It might be that you and your partner need to go and start considering some couples counseling. It might be a particular area of your business. It might not just be business as a whole. It might be, God, that EA that I hired really isn't working out and I'm trying to avoid, having that awkward conversation about putting her into performance management. It could be, that you're chasing your accountant every single quarter because the accountant's not doing be honest with yourself, and this is something that I have learned time and time and time again. Every single answer. And there are always, in my opinion, sort of 3 versions of us. The version that we used to be, who's normally trying to crawl their way back in some way, shape or form. The version of us who we are now, and the version of us who is leading the charge. And that version of you that is leading the charge is found in the breath and found in the silence and found in the really honest conversations that you have with yourself. So give yourself space to hear your own truth.
I got chills.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you so, so much. Where can people find you, follow you, work with you?
You can love all over my reels. That would be great. Over on Instagram, I am Em Chadbourne. Over on Instagram, I have a Facebook group, which is called Unashamedly Human. I have a podcast of the same name. So yeah, come and find me on socials.
Fabulous. We'll pop it in the show notes for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Em. That was an amazing conversation. I too, like Nikki, am going to go back and listen to this and actually take the time to sit down and do that one action. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, me too. And there were actually lots of little littering of beautiful actions to take in there. So definitely worth worth it. Actually, just to finish out what came to my mind, I have had busy mothers say to me that the toilet is the only quiet place that they get. So even if you have to do this in the toilet, no judgment. It's okay. Find a way and make it work. Thank you so much for joining us, Em.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Em.
everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.